eventually, if I've been creating this ideal and I get this good rush of good feelings, I think this dating relationship is so wonderful, but I'm not really committed to that person, I'm really focused on this ideal, I'm going to have to come to terms with who eventually? The real person. And that real person is not as glamorous and wonderful as I thought that they were. And now I don't get this rush of good feelings anymore. So what's going to happen? I'm going to be frustrated. I'm going, well, how come I don't have this good feeling anymore? And the relationship is going to end. I remember at an undergraduate school I used to teach at, you'd see all these great Catholic couples that were always wanting to do the Catholic dating thing right. And the freshmen would look up at the senior couples that were all just living the ABCs of Catholic dating perfectly. You know, they would pray the Rosary together, study theology of the body together. They'd go to Mass and hold hands at the Our Father in that real special way, you know. And so they feel really close together, and all the freshmen go, oh, I hope I get a relationship like that someday. And then 4 weeks later, that senior ideal couple broke up. They don't talk to each other, and they hate each other's guts. What happened? All the freshmen are, oh my goodness, I thought that was the perfect Catholic dating relationship. What happened? And I'm sitting back watching all this, and this would happen over and over again. You saw they just fell in love, not with each other, but with the ideal. They idealized each other. There was a Protestant group, I remember, that did campus ministry work, and they used to have men's Bible studies and women's Bible studies. And one spring they decided, well, let's pair up the men and women and form prayer partners. You know, so the men and women could get together and pray together. So the guys and women would sit down and they'd pray for each other's needs. You know, and you can just imagine, guess what happened? Here it is, men and women paired up to pray in spring. You know, most of them started dating, right? Because some guy starts opening up or starts praying, you know, I pray for Susie and for a situation back at home, and that the Lord will just strengthen her and give her courage to do the right thing. And, you know, this woman's sitting there going, what a great man. Yeah. But it created this false illusion of where the relationship was really at. And so they all went to summer vacation, and guess what happened after 3 months of reality, and they came back in the fall? Guess what happened to those relationships? Most of them ended. And it was chaos for the whole leadership of that school and that particular ministry. But we want to be really careful. When we idealize, we're going to eventually have to deal with the real person, and we'll end up with disillusionment. So these are some of the dangers that we can fall into. What we're going to do is come back in our next episode and look at positively how do we build strong relationships and strong marriages as we consider men, women, and the mystery of love.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Supreme Court leak. Lawmakers continue to react to the High Court document concerning Roe v. Wade. We have team coverage and analysis, including what the Vice President said to a pro-abortion group last night in the nation's capital. Papal priority. We hear from a member of the organization charged with fighting clergy sexual abuse. And living calm. EWTN host and author Dr. Ray Guarendi shares his secrets for overcoming anger and frustration. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, May 4th, 2022. Thank you so much for being with us tonight on this Feast of St. Florian. I'm Tracy Sable. Well, we are getting reaction tonight to the Supreme Court leak from the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. In a statement, Archbishop William Lori, the chairman of the Bishop Committee on Pro-Life Activities, writes in part, the leak reminds us of the urgent need for prayer and action at this pivotal moment in our country. The Archbishop of Baltimore adds, as Catholics, we care about every unborn child and every mother. Our church has consistently witnessed in word and deed that life begins at the moment of conception. He continues, we hope and pray for a change in our laws and stand ready to help all pregnant women in need in each of our communities. And since Monday night's leak, the finger pointing on Capitol Hill has intensified. Democrats are vowing to take action if Roe versus Wade is overturned. Meanwhile, Republicans say the leak has jeopardized the integrity of the court. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales begins our team coverage from outside of the nation's highest court. Eric.
Well, Tracy, emotions are certainly running high inside the halls of Congress as the protests continue outside the nation's highest court. There are really two issues at stake here, one of which is the decision in the case itself and also the investigation into the leak. Democrats claim if the decision is in fact holding up and will be true, then it will put the lives of women in danger, their lives throughout the nation.
It's not going to fall hardest on well-to-do women. They can afford to get on a plane and go to another state where abortion is legal. They can afford to leave the country. Who this is going to fall hardest on is going to be on poor women.
Be prepared, because this culture war is going to take us beyond abortion. It's going to take us into family planning, the rights of those who are LGBTQ, and certainly gay marriage.
Democrats say Republicans will pay at the ballot box if the Supreme Court overturns Roe.
They know they're on the wrong side of history. They know they're on the wrong side of where the American people are. They know they'll pay consequences in the 2022 elections.
Republican Senator Bill Cassidy, a doctor, tells me abortion is bad enough, but he says Democrats want to go further.
So the baby's being born, and there are Democrats who would say even then you can abort. Now that's not an abortion. That is a life that is incipient, which is destroyed.
Democrats accuse some justices nominated by President Donald Trump of lying during their confirmation hearings, but Senator Kevin Cramer says that's not the case.
When people get nominated and then confirmed to the Supreme Court, whatever they think before they hear a case, things can change when they hear a case. I mean, that's why they hear cases.
It destroys the ability to talk among yourselves, form consensus. The last thing the court needs is a political firestorm.
Whoever did this leak should be prosecuted and should go to jail for a very long time. This has shaken the independence and the ability of the judiciary to function.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer tells me as soon as next week the Senate will take a vote to codify Roe, but that will require 60 votes to get that done. And right now, Democrats don't have those votes. And also, Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia has already said that he will not vote for a filibuster. Reporting outside the Supreme Court, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
President Joe Biden spoke out again today about the impact of the leaked Supreme Court opinion. He claims that this is about a lot more than abortion. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Tracy, good evening to you. President Joe Biden, he fired back today asking what are the next things that are going to be attacked. But pro-lifers say it's his administration that treats pregnancy as some sort of disease or burden.
After delivering a speech on the economy, President Joe Biden was questioned again about abortion. He ripped the leaked high court opinion on Roe v. Wade, warning this.
What happens if you have a state changes the law saying that children who are LGBTQ can't be in classrooms with other children? Is that legit under the way the decision is written?
The president also took a swipe at Donald Trump's Make America Great Again supporters and then abruptly walked off, taking no more questions.
Because this MAGA crowd is really the most extreme political organization that's existed in American history, in recent American history.
Just last night, at an event for Emily's List, a pro-abortion organization, Vice President Kamala Harris said women's rights in America are under attack.
If the court overturns Roe v. Wade, it will be a direct assault on freedom.
And she hammered home the Biden administration's position.
Roe protects the right to access abortion.
But Lila Rose from the pro-life group Live Action told us Tuesday Roe v. Wade has never been about the will of the people, and it's never been about justice.
President Biden and his administration are ruled by a far-left fringe pro-abortion extreme that wants abortion on demand through all 9 months in all 50 states. This is completely out of step with the vast majority of Americans.
And earlier today, the GOP tweeted the Republican Party will continue to stand for the sanctity of life, speak up for the unborn, and help vulnerable mothers. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
And joining us now to discuss is Charmaine Yoest, conservative strategist and former president and CEO of Americans United for Life, and Sarah Parshall Perry, senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Thank you both for being here. We appreciate it. Sarah, I want to start with you. As we just heard in Owen's report, President Biden is suggesting that the leaked Supreme Court opinion isn't just about abortion and that it could have a negative impact on people in other ways. I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Sure. It doesn't surprise me that this is a public statement that he's making. It's ultimately fear-mongering and histrionics at their worst. And in fact, the draft opinion itself, written by Justice Alito, limited the holding of the case, the potential holding of the case, strictly to the abortion issue and would not impact any other rights emanating from the Constitution. In fact, specifically in Roe versus Wade, the Supreme Court recognized that abortion was fundamentally different from other privacy rights, specifically because it involved the termination of a human life. Justice Alito echoed that opinion in the draft opinion, again, saying abortion is unique and unlike any other right because it involves termination of a human life. So not only is it unlikely, I would say that it's very much in keeping with what we're going to see in increasing numbers heading into the midterm season.
Charmaine, this question is for you. We know the opinion was circulated to members of the court back in February, and the decision was due to be announced sometime in June or July before the justices go on their summer break. That said, why do you think the leak happened this week, and what do you think of this timing?
Well, I think it's a naked attempt to influence the internal vote of the Supreme Court. Obviously, whoever leaked it is trying to mobilize opposition. They wanted to see the instantaneous demonstrations that were coincidentally came up immediately after the leak that were outside the Supreme Court. But, you know, this may not cut exactly the way that they think it is. We had an immediate opportunity to kind of test their theory that it was going to help them in the midterms. But in actual fact, we had the primary votes in Ohio last night, and Republicans had record-breaking turnout while the Democrats did not. So, you know, maybe that's a little too early to connect to this decision, but it was an opportunity to test this theory that this was going to mobilize people to vote. And I think that there's been many decades of the left relying on really skewed polling with very carefully calibrated questions that led them to believe their own press releases that overestimated how much the American people supported Roe and supported a very extremist abortion regime that, if this decision comes down, as this draft seems to indicate, will actually turn the decision-making on abortion back to the people at the state level.
Yeah. And as we've been hearing, I mean, Democrats are pushing for Roe to be codified. In fact, Chuck Schumer told our Eric Rosales that the Senate is going to be voting on it as soon as next week. So what exactly will that mean if the court does overturn Roe? I mean, could that render a pro-abortion law passed by Congress to be unconstitutional? Sarah, can you break this down for us?
Yes, absolutely. It could indeed. And in fact, I don't know how one legislates on a right that the Supreme Court has already claimed does not exist in the Constitution. So the attempt to legislate at the federal level, something that is better left to the states, and which it looks like the Supreme Court is going to leave to the states, is not likely to pass constitutional muster. Beyond that, it is clear that the Democrats don't have the votes to overcome the filibuster, which they would absolutely need to do in order to get a piece of legislation like this passed. But what we're going to see in return is ultimately a state-level initiative to push bills that ultimately protect life. We've seen them in increasing numbers, and 26 states are most likely to outlaw or severely restrict abortion, which is precisely the way the 10th Amendment to the Constitution and our system of federalism ought to work.
And Charmaine, on Monday, 3 major abortion advocacy groups, including Planned Parenthood, announced that they'll be spending $150 million on the midterm elections to help, as they say, safeguard access to abortion. I'd like to get your reaction to that.
Well, of course they are, and they're really trying to gin up as much histrionics and hysteria over this potential decision as they possibly can. That's why you see the president making statements that are making kind of wild allegations about, throwing the kitchen sink in about how this could affect this, that, and the other thing. But again, I really do think they're overestimating the strength of their position. And you really have to kind of look at the fact that they don't currently have the votes in the Senate to push back, constitutional or not. They can't even get there right now. And why is that? Abortion has been on the ballot at the state level, in Congress, in the Senate, in the White House for decades now. And the truth of the matter is, despite the fact that they like to characterize Roe and the current abortion regime as quote unquote settled law, it is anything but settled, given the fact that the pro-life movement has continued to pass legislation at the state level to bring it to the court, and to bring it to this level indicates that the American people really do want to see a change. That's the beauty of our system, is that by working at the grassroots level and actually voting, you can bring about change.
And we have probably about 30 seconds left or so. But Charmaine, any final thoughts?
Well, I think that it's going to, we do still need to wait and see how it comes out, but it's going to be a really dramatic decision. And I really do think that the pro-life sentiment is going to prevail.
And Sarah, how about you?
Well, I would say we're going to see an increase in inflammatory rhetoric going into the midterms, which my guess is precisely the design behind this early leak. And we'll see calls for everything from court packing to judicial codes of ethics. But ultimately, I think, as Charmaine said, this is going to be a conversation for the states. And the people have already made abundantly clear that they are interested most in protecting a culture of life.
Okay, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you both so much for being here with us today. We appreciate it. And as we just heard, author J.D. Vance is the big winner in Ohio's crucial Republican Senate primary. Vance thanked former President Donald Trump for his political endorsement. He also received support from Ohio Right to Life. Vance, a recent Catholic convert, will face another Catholic in the general election, veteran Congressman Tim Ryan, who easily won the Democratic primary. Coming up, Pope Francis talks nuclear weapons with Japan's prime minister. Plus, the Holy Father says faith is not just for the elderly. We'll explain.
Hello, I'm Jeanette Williams. Sister Breeze is with us to conclude our programs on God's healing power. Throughout, she's encouraged us to have faith in the power of God, to trust in His gifts, and to embrace His love. Now, Sister will tell us what prevents us from receiving God's healing and what we can do about it. That's Women of Grace, tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, here on EWTN.
For me, it was a 15-year struggling match.
It was a surprising thing to realize that there was a continuity between Scripture, what the early church taught, what the Catholic Church still taught.
It's so real and so natural that we're not perfect, and yet we're called to be perfect. And so each day I can try to be a little bit more perfect by God's help.
Witness the Holy Spirit at work in a new episode of Catholics Come Home, Sunday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on EWTN.
Japan's newly elected Prime Minister and Pope Francis agree upon a world free of nuclear weapons. Fumio Kishida met with the Holy Father today. The Vatican says the Pope is concerned about nuclear-armed Russia at war in Ukraine. Japan worries about neighboring North Korea, which has tested another missile as part of its own nuclear ambitions. Meantime, Pope Francis says that faith is not just something for old people.
Che la fede è una spiritualità, non una pratica.
At his weekly talk to pilgrims at the Vatican, the Holy Father said faith often is shown in a negative light. In reality, trusting in our Lord is something to be proud of because it changes lives and purifies minds. Pope Francis also apologized for sitting down throughout the gathering. He says his knee remains painful, but is likely to feel better soon. The Holy Father is also continuing his calls for more accountability regarding clergy sexual abuse. He recently met with the Vatican group charged with protecting minors. EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief Andreas Thonhauser sat down with one of the members of that group earlier today.
We're here right next to St. Peter's with Emer McCarthy, project manager for the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors that has now or will be soon a part of the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith, which will then be named Dicastery for the Doctrine of Faith. Emer, you are working with survivors, with victims of abuse within the church. Can you tell us a little bit more this new structure? How will this help your work?
Well, I think the Holy Father, when he received us at the end of our plenary a few days ago, in his address outlined how he sees us fitting into the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith and how he sees the work and life of the Commission going forward. He very much underscored the fact that we are an independent commission. We keep our independence. We have our own president. We report directly to the Holy Father. But he also wanted to put us in the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith because he sees the issue of the discipline and the issue of a proactive safeguarding agenda as being complementary. I think that over the last 7 years, this journey that we've been on together with the Holy Father and with the Church Universal in really listening, studying and building policy in development for safeguarding of and the protection of minors in our church has taught us one thing, that the abuse of a person in our church, a child or a vulnerable adult, is not only an attack and a crime on that person, but it's also an attack on our faith. We are a faith that proclaims love, and therefore I think putting us together with this disciplinary section says that we are going to have a proactive agenda in the church in this one area. Another interesting part of that discourse to our members on Friday was that he outlined 3 criteria. He said he wanted us to help ensure that the church was a safe place, a place of healing, and a trustworthy place. And then he also gave us the tools, the instruments that he sees going forward to help us implement these criteria.
So obviously the Holy Father also in the audience that you had with him made clear that this is very close to his heart, very important for him. Would you say that is something that is true for the rest of the church as well?
We are a universal church. We are diverse, and we are in diverse nations, and we are part of diverse cultures. Not every culture is at the same level of understanding or awareness of this issue. Therefore, to say that there is a uniform response and we're all at the same level would be misleading. We know that there are some proactive churches, such as the United States, who are very, very ahead on this game, and there are other churches who are only really arriving now at the table and understanding now what it means to develop a safeguarding policy, what it means to implement it, and all those structures within their national church that actually take care of children or have vulnerable adults within it, and then to verify it. We're there to help them. We're there to help them through the departments here at the Roman Curia who are at the service of the local church by working together in a collaborative spirit. So it's not uniform, no, and there is a lot of work to be done still.
Emer, allow me also a personal question. You are engaging with survivors, with victims of abuse. How do you manage to keep your personal faith in humanity and the church, in faith itself?
Well, I'm not going to lie to you. There are days where it's very, very hard, but I have to say it's the endurance, the pursuit of truth, of the men and women survivors and victims who've had the courage, I mean the unbelievable courage, to come forward against all odds and share their story until we, the church, had to wake up and realize that they are actually our heroes. It's these men and women, the love a lot of them still have for the church, who hold on to their faith, which is still such a central part of their lives. Makes me understand that, in a way, for me, this is God working through them to help us purify our church.
Emer McCarthy, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for your work at the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors.
Up next, turn life's frustrations into living calm. EWTN's Dr. Ray Guarendi tells us how.
Hello, family. We know that the Holy Rosary is one of the most powerful prayers of the Church. And during May, Mary's Month, we can pray the Rosary even more, asking for the intercession of the Blessed Mother to her beloved Son. This month, let's join as a family in prayer for the protection of all human life. So many are invested in the culture of death. But Pope St. John Paul II once said of fellow Christians, "We are the people of life." And at EWTN, we are firmly committed to proclaiming and defending a culture of life. Today, we have a special gift for you, a pro-life Rosary ebook. This online resource will guide you through the Holy Rosary with meditations that shine a light on the inherent value of every human life. Also, we hope that you'll make a donation today so that we can continue broadcasting the Holy Rosary and proclaiming the pro-life message to the nations. Thank you for your prayers and support. And may Jesus guide us all as we live out the mission of being the people of life.
To make a donation and to sign up for the free Pro-Life Rosary ebook, please visit EWTN.com/Pro-Life Rosary. You may also make a donation by calling us at 1-800-447-EWTN or by sending your gift to EWTN 5817 Old Leeds Road, Irondale, Alabama 35210.
A new book from EWTN Publishing is hoping to help readers live a more calm life. Living Calm, Mastering Anger and Frustration discusses our emotional responses, explains how to create healthy coping strategies, and unpacks the difference between righteous and unrighteous anger. Dr. Ray Guarendi is host of EWTN's Living Right with Dr. Ray and EWTN Radio's The Doctor Is In. He is also the author of Living Calm, Mastering Anger and Frustration. Dr. Ray, great to see you. Thank you so much for your time today. Tell us a little bit more about your book and also why you decided to write it. What inspired you?
Most people don't go to confession, or they don't feel bad because they punched somebody. They feel bad because of what they said. And what they said is generally provoked by their internal emotional state: anger, agitation, frustration, irritation. And that's why I wrote the book. You calm that stuff down, you're a lot nicer person.
Oh, for sure. I know you opened the book discussing the recent shift in the language from phrases such as he has a short fuse to, well, he struggles with anger management issues. Talk to us a little bit more about this and why that shift is so significant.
We have over-psychologized our language. We basically have termed everything in the words of some kind of psychological process. Tracy, as you do that, you reduce personal responsibility. You complicate the whole picture. Rather than saying, I did that, that was wrong, that was my fault, I have anger management issues.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you know, we do have to take responsibility for things in our life. In your book, you really dive into that anger. I'm curious, Dr. Ray, why did you choose that emotion to hone in on?
It can be the most destructive, Tracy. It can be the one that hurts people the most. It can be the one that evokes the most guilt. Few people, after getting angry, say, you know, I feel so much better now. I vented. I told them what was on my mind. No, they generally feel bad about acting and talking the way they did. 90% of all the nasty stuff I have done in my life came on the heels of being angry or agitated. People think that anger is an emotion. That's part of it, Tracy. But part of it is it's a thought. You have to explore, what am I thinking that is provoking this emotional state?
Yeah, and you know, jumping off of that, Dr. Ray, I mean, what are some of the strategies that maybe, you know, we can employ when we're feeling angry or frustrated?
One of the first things to do is to not speak under emotion. If you can hold yourself for 10 seconds, physiologically, you will calm enough to get control. I use this example. Somebody says to me, can't help it. Can't help it. I had to say what I had to say. If I would have said to them right at that moment, I'll give you $1 million if you don't say it, they would say, oh, okay. Well, how about 10,000? How about 1,000? So in other words, what they're really saying is they can control what they say under that surge of emotion. It just comes down to whether they think it's worthwhile.
Yeah, very, very good point there. I want to talk about this, talk about our faith, and how can leaning into faith help to maybe alleviate some of that anger and frustration that, you know, we face, especially during these times, which has been so trying for a lot of people?
If you don't have faith, it is very hard to want to grow. Why would I, Tracy? If I don't have the discipleship of the God-man, if I don't say I want to follow him and I want to improve myself and I don't want to act on my emotions towards others, then I can fall back on, well, that's me. You know, I had a right to do that. Most people in that situation would do that, wouldn't they? I didn't say anything that anybody else wouldn't say. What tends to happen is, without the desire to improve for our Lord's sake, it's easy to stay exactly as you are. And research says that. Personality can be very stable if you let it.
Dr. Ray, we have maybe 30 seconds left, but before I let you go, what are maybe some of the takeaways that you hope readers will gain from reading your book, and any tips for folks?
I think they'll understand how to think about thinking, how to get into their own head and say, how am I interpreting this situation? How am I taking everything personal? What am I telling myself that is breeding this emotion? Is my anger righteous, which is I am upset because somebody else is being hurt, or is it right-filled, I'm upset because I'm being hurt?
Well, Dr. Ray, thank you so much for coming on and for talking to us about your book. It's so helpful. We appreciate it. God bless you.
Well, Tracy, if you wouldn't have called me, I'd have been very upset and angry.
We'll count to 10 next time. Thank you so much, Dr. Ray.
Bye.
And you can get Dr. Ray's book at the EWTN Religious Catalog, EWTNRC.com. Living Calm is item number 82637, so go out and buy it. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.
Hi, I'm Doug Keck, inviting you to join me next time for a special bookmark. 3 different books featured: The Marian Manifesto, The World's Greatest Secret, and Night of Love.
We've committed to be part of this movement. And yes, it is to save souls. When Our Lady said to children, are you willing to offer your lives in prayer and reparation for the salvation of sinners? And yes, we have to say yes.
3 books about Fatima, published by the Blue Army Press. Next time on Bookmark.
No matter where you are in the world or what culture you are born into, our Catholic faith connects us, and sharing a meal brings us together as a universal family through Christ. Fruit of the earth, fruit of the vine, and the work of human hands, it will become what spiritually feeds us. And this is going to be great as we make our trip and get in touch with the people, the food, and help others